So thank you, Gavin. Thank you very much. Extremely interesting session today, and I really enjoyed it. And it looks like all the work that has been done by all these professors and the people that has put all this effort behind it has been very, very much worth it. And I'm extremely happy. This is going to be an interesting session because, one, I'm not a professor and have never been. So I'm kind of the student here trying to give a lesson. Second, you will see that because I'm of a standards organization, this is not standardized. So the presentation you will see does not follow the kind of model that you've been seeing up to now. I'm not going to tell you how to teach your lessons, I think. But I'm going to try, on the other hand, to point at some issues. Another paradox is that usually in a company, when you start something, you start with a strategy. And today we are ending with a strategy. So that's another of the interesting things. But I think it's worth it because this is one of the let's say remade or new chapters in the book, and it's a lot that we can say about it. If you follow the full session, there's a lot about how strategically important standards are. And we have seen this all throughout all the presentations. There's a very, very relevant strategic value on standards. So because I knew I was in the end, and because I knew of this, and because I read the book from page 117, I will try to look at what the book contains, but I'm not going to follow the book. What a surprise. I'm going to try and get some nuggets. All of what I'm going to say is in the book. However, it is trying to also put some questions on the table, and it's also for you to, because there are no good answers to any of the things. It's again, it depends on the time, on the geography, on the economic situation, and it depends on so many things that it may be a good answer depending on these many variables, how they fit in time. So I'm going to start from the very beginning, and we'll try to focus a little bit this big question of standards and strategy. And let's look at it from the perspective of someone, so a company, an organization that wants to engage in standardization. And there's a strategic value. And what do you think is the first question, the very first question any company would ask, or any organization would ask before starting anything? Very first question.
What's in it for me?
That's the question. So why should I do this? What am I going to get? Okay, if I engage in here, what's my gain? And then immediately afterwards, second question. And how much is this going to cost me? Because everybody wants to say this famous return on investment. So this much I put, but only if I get this much, because otherwise it's not worth it. It was interesting, and I said, I think it was you, were talking about the keyboards, and I was the QWERTY and Vorak, and there's the 1.5, or the one in the middle, the question in the middle. Yes, the Vorak keyboard might be better, but not better enough, which means, okay, yes, this is better, but the cost of change is not worth it. Right? So better is not always the direct answer. All right. So again, many questions. So depending on that, depending on those many questions and where we are going to look at, companies may get to engage in standardization at the different levels, because again, engaging in standardization could go from, okay, I look at it from the distance and know what's happening, to I do whatever it takes to standardize. So I'm going to try and pick few subjects, as I said. Let's start from the big one, business. And we've been talking about this all throughout the session today. And there are companies, of course, that have a huge business interest in engaging in standardization. And they will put lots of resources. I mean, we've been doing some calculations, and it's very difficult to put it up and say, oh, yes, this is what it takes. But I know companies have been putting lots of brains in trying to understand how much standardization costs and how much investment companies do in standardization. My own analysis, if you could look just in ETSI, how much person hours, I cannot say man hours anymore, these companies are putting just in standards activities, so just the committees, the calls and everything that's going on here. If you add to that traveling, if you add to that the cost of these engineers, if you add to that the preparation, if you add to that the departments which are behind these people that are here doing their things, I mean, in the order of billions of euros per year, it is huge. And I'm talking just ETSI. It is amazing how much it is input. Because definitely any of these companies who have such huge R&D departments, which are cooperating with academia, with other R&D, with centers, when they get value, they don't want to get this value and, oh, how clever I am, I'm putting this in my safe. That's it. No, they want to input all that into something which is a product. And by the way, if by that I can get more market value, that's great, because that's my business. But if on top of that, and we've been speaking a little bit about intellectual property, if on top of that my intellectual property is there, it is not that I am going to block, it is that I'm going to change my intellectual property with this one that has intellectual property. And if anybody of you don't have intellectual property, we are very happy that you pay for it. Because in fact, and that's a fair trade, in fact, if I'm putting all this effort, it is for me, not because I'm very kind to humanity as well, but not only, it is because I have a business, I have to get some money back so that I can invest in my property again. So that's going on. And that brings very much this topic of how do I get R&D close to standards? It's fundamental. It's a link that you cannot break. So let's go with something that has also been cited or mentioned today, which is policy. And beyond public procurement is market entry. So sometimes there are conditions that governments want to impose, and many of those are technical. So how would a product get into a market? And how can we allow this product to go fast into the market? And many times it's easier referring to standards than trying to set the technical reasons specifically to a certain regulation. So standards are important in this respect because they allow market entry, but they allow homogeneity across countries. I think in Europe, that's a must, because otherwise it would have been crazy. Just imagine GSM without something which could, make some kind of homogeneous platform to allow devices to be deployed all throughout the countries. Some of you may remember when even a fixed phone had to go through type approval in each of our countries and how difficult it was. Just imagine with GSM. And I would remind some of you that this was how GSM started, with type approval having to be in each country, and it was a mess. And I think several people pulled off their hairs. trying to find a solution. So this is important, but then it's equally important that all these companies that have vested interests in technology are able to influence how this market entry will look like and how it will be for my technology to get access to the market. So that's kind of important. That's kind of a huge business value. That's kind of something which is influenced through standards. So, well, this has some kind of weight in the way that companies behave. Let me keep going. Time to market. This is my favorite because, of course, the standards are so slow. Why do you do standards? Right? For everybody, come on. Well, actually, I would challenge that, and I would say that standards are extremely timely. Technology happens when it has to happen, not before, not after. Sometimes, of course, nobody's perfect. Sometimes we come too early, sometimes we come too late. But in the interest of those who participate in the standards, and this has been said today, but let me remind you, that the guys who do the standards are others, are the ones that I host, I provide rooms, right? So they are the guys who make the standards and who decide how fast they want to move, and they have to move, which is related to market, which is related to policy, which is related to many of other environmental conditions, including their own commercial interests. All this is mixed up, and all this is into this formula that at the end of the day says time to market, so timely. Things are going to be delivered as are needed. And we have examples. If you go not so long back to the 5G history, when 5G started, there was a kind of calendar very well stipulated by all the people who wanted 5G and said, okay, the first release of 5G would be whenever. All of a sudden, there was a big market push in one region of the world which said, I need 5G out there 6 months before. Guess what? Standards were ready and the product was out. Probably not as good as, but it was out because it was needed. So it is the market, it is those who work on standards that decide the time to market. So next time that you hear, but standards are slow, yes, they are. We have also spoken about networking, and I would talk about the value of networking, not just of this famous Metcalfe law, I think it is, but also about the networking of the people who do standards. This is huge value, huge value. And again, when we was talking about it, being physically in a room and being able to take a coffee with your colleagues is extremely valuable. Meeting peers, knowing what their concerns are, knowing where things are going, knowing how technology, what's their interest, is the best school. Believe me, this is the best school. And in fact, not only that, because what these people will be doing as well is they will be sharing some of their plans for the future. So these huge companies, and not only the huge companies, we heard how SMEs are really having lots of cloud in 3GPP, which is a huge animal. They do because they bring brains, and those are extremely appreciated among the community of experts. So when these people can, with their views, with their solutions, with their proposals, people start planning for the future. People start seeing how things build up or how things shouldn't build up. So that works both directions. And it's again, by making friends in the coffee machines where we end up having things working. So quite a strategic move. And by the way, leveraging all that needs to be understood. So those companies not understanding all this are those companies who you won't see present in standards, but you won't see their products also too present in the marketplace. Guess what? And cooperation. In the book, we talk about the importance and relevance of cooperation. And we know that this is inevitable. Not everybody can do everything. ETSI is very limited in our scope, despite how big we may be. Actually, we are very limited in our scope. There are many other organizations that do similar or completing subjects, and this is needed or not, because there's the other side of the coin here as well, and we know it happens, and it's part of the game. When something doesn't really get traction somewhere, and then you take it somewhere else to try and see whether you get traction. Because at the end of the day, this is voluntary, this is cooperative, and maybe when we talk about competing standard bodies, let's look a little bit inside. It's not the standards bodies that compete. It is those members in the standards bodies who are competing and are taking two different fields to try to bring this competition, because this competition might have, or these discussions might have ended in one of the fields, and they need to bring the ball somewhere else. So sometimes this happens, and we need to live with that. This is part of the game, but I think this is part of a healthy game, because at the end of the day, you need this competition, and you need this how they say, effort to have innovation and to have things progressing and to have interests going in the direction that at the end is most wanted. Maybe not the better or the best, but the one which is more supported. This is interesting because we have heard, or I have heard something which I don't buy very much into, which is this, oh, but ICT is pervasive, it's everywhere, so now there are boundaries among sectors are blurring, and now everything is the same. No, it is not. Excuse me, I don't believe it is. I think we still have this differentiation in areas of technology, and we need to have it. We will have excellent, I think someone talked about bakers, and I like that because the baker is the analogy I like the best. So you have bakers and you want the best baker, but you don't want the baker baking chips unless they are chocolate chips. I mean, the other ones, the silicon chips, let the Intels of this world do them, okay? Both are ovens, but maybe a little bit different. And this will keep on being. Now, what we really need is a closer cooperation and interlink between different sectors. That's inevitable. And we need to align languages, semantics. Sometimes the same word means different things for different communities. And we need to have them talk to each other, because what people in the, let's call it ICT world, understand and try to provide solutions to, need to be matching with the requirements that, I don't know, the agricultural sector is having. Communication is not the same thing for both segments. We need to understand what kind of communication the agricultural sector have, what kind of issues they might have with security, with many other aspects that in the ICT world, we are unable to understand. We need to sit together, we need to do this cross-fertilization, if I may. We need to have these communities working together, and then standards will come together. And now sitting in these standards bodies help these early talks and this preparing the products for the future. And this comes to, so many standards bodies where to choose from. Where do I go? And I think that at the end of the day, it's not only what the text says. So the title is whoever, the greatest standards, whatever. Well, actually, you need to look further on and see, well, how much this organization is influencing technology, the sector, where things go to, the government, so policy in a country, in a region, it may change. Where are the decisions made? How are the decisions made? If I go to this body, how are things moving? Who has a say here? How much my voice would be heard? And what do I have to do to have my voice heard? And what's the impact of those decisions? And where will it impact? At home? Or maybe a little bit farther? And all this is very relevant when you come to see how much effort you put and where you put this effort. And of course, future looking. So what is the plans, or what are the plans looking forward? Who are the ones involved in this organization? Who are the ones that are pushing for a certain solution, and how is it evolving? Is it something that goes up and we really get a buy-in from the community, or is it something that's really, fading out and therefore, well, maybe not the place to go? And we shouldn't forget that, it was said today as well, that standards not only look at the future, and I have this picture in my mind of the stair where standards just help consolidate each of the steps, and innovation help build the next step. And then next step is built, standards consolidate it, you put your foot on top and keep climbing. So it's kind of a continuous improvement. So you cannot forget about the steps behind you, because many times the value and the importance of what you're doing for the future is very much based on what you have done in the past. And you cannot forget that all these products which are out in the market are not going as the keyboard. And people are not just going to take them, throw them through the window. They need to keep on being in the market. And whatever you produce next needs to take into account what's back. So all these things are of strategic importance. And when you are an organization and are looking into, well, how much do I invest? Where do I invest? And so on and so forth. You need to take all this picture in your mind, at least, and then decide what's the game you want to play and how you want to play this game. So, as I was saying, everything is in the book, probably said in a different manner, probably more cleverly, but at least you have also some little hints and little, questions that you can address yourselves and discuss. And I'll stop it here. Thank you very much.